Imagine pulling a simple penny from your pocket and realizing it might be far more mysterious than it looks. No mint mark, no obvious sign of where it came from, just a quiet, copper coin from 1967. But what if that missing detail is exactly what makes it so interesting? Today, we're diving into the story of the 1967 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks like any ordinary coin. You've probably seen dozens of them without even thinking twice. But behind this small piece of metal is a unique moment in American history, a time when the U.S. Mint made an unusual decision that still sparks curiosity among collectors today. The 1967 Lincoln penny is part of the long-running Lincoln cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. By 1967, the design was already familiar to millions of Americans. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile, calm and dignified. On the back, you find the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol of unity and national pride. It's a design that feels timeless, and by the late 1960s, it had become a daily part of life. But 1967 wasn't just another year for coin production. It was a time of change and pressure for the U.S. Mint. Coin shortages were becoming a serious issue across the country. People were hoarding coins, collectors were pulling them out of circulation, and everyday transactions were starting to feel the impact. To solve this problem, the government took a bold step. From 1965 to 1967, the U.S. Mint made the unusual decision to remove mint marks from all circulating coins. That means no D for Denver, no S for San Francisco. Every coin looked the same, no matter where it was made. The goal was simple: discourage collectors from hoarding coins based on mint location and keep more coins in everyday circulation. So, when you see a 1967 penny with no mint mark, it's not an error. It's actually exactly how it was supposed to be made. And that's what makes it so interesting. It represents a rare moment when the rules of coin production were temporarily changed. Now let's talk about the physical details of this coin. The 1967 Lincoln penny is made primarily of copper, about 95%, with a small amount of tin and zinc. It has a smooth edge and weighs just over 3 grams. The front features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. If you look closely, you might even spot his initials, VDB. Near the bottom of Lincoln's shoulder on the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, and if your eyes are sharp, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. It's one of those subtle details that many people overlook, but once you notice it, you can't unsee it. So if the missing mint mark is normal, what makes some of these coins valuable? The answer lies in condition, rarity within quality grades, and possible minting errors. While millions of 1967 pennies were produced, not all of them have survived in great condition. Most were used heavily in circulation, which means finding one that looks almost brand new is surprisingly difficult. Coins are graded on their condition, ranging from heavily worn to pristine, uncirculated examples. A typical 1967 penny in average condition might only be worth a few cents. But if you find one that has never been circulated with sharp details and a bright, original luster, its value can increase significantly. In high grades, especially those certified by professional grading services, some 1967 no-mint mark pennies have sold for hundreds of dollars. And in rare cases, coins with exceptional quality or unique characteristics can go even higher. Then there are error coins. These are where things get really exciting. During the minting process, small mistakes can happen. Maybe the coin is struck slightly off-center. Maybe there's a doubling effect on the letters or numbers. These errors are not common, and collectors love them because each one is unique. For example, a 1967 penny with a noticeable double die error, where the text appears slightly duplicated, can attract serious attention. Other errors, like clipped planchets or die cracks, can also increase a coin's value depending on how visible and dramatic they are. Collectors are always searching for these hidden details, and that's part of what makes this coin so fascinating. It's not just about what you see at first glance. It's about what you might discover if you take a closer look. Now, you might be wondering how to tell if your 1967 penny is something special or just a common coin. The first step is to examine its condition. Look at the surface. Is it worn down, or are the details still sharp? Does it have a bright shine, or has it turned dull over time? Next, check for any unusual features. Look closely at the date, the lettering, and Lincoln's profile. Use a magnifying glass if you can. You're searching for anything that looks slightly off, like doubling, misalignment, or unusual marks that don't seem like normal wear. It's also important to be aware of cleaning. Many people think cleaning a coin will increase its value, but in reality, it often does the opposite. A cleaned coin can lose much of its appeal to collectors, especially if the cleaning leaves scratches or unnatural shine. If you think you found a high-quality or unusual 1967 penny, you might consider having it evaluated by a professional grading service. They can authenticate the coin, assign it a grade, and give you a better idea of its true market value. There's also the question of fakes. While 1967 pennies are not among the most commonly counterfeited coins, it's still important to be cautious, especially if you're buying one that's claimed to be rare or valuable. Genuine coins will have consistent weight, size, and details. If something feels off, it's always a good idea to get a second opinion. Here's a fun detail that surprises many people. Even though all 1967 pennies have no mint mark, they were still produced in multiple mint facilities. You just can't tell which one made your coin by looking at it. That little mystery adds to the charm. Every coin has a hidden origin story that you can't quite trace. Another interesting fact is how this short period, from 1965 to 1967, stands out in U.S. coin history. It's one of the few times when the mint intentionally removed identifying marks from coins. That decision created a unique category of coins that collectors still talk about today. And let's not forget the cultural context. The late 1960s were a time of major change in the United States. From social movements to economic shifts, the country was evolving rapidly. Even something as small as a penny reflects that era. It's a tiny piece of history you can hold in your hand. So why do collectors still care about the 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny? Part of it is the story. Coins are more than just metal. They're snapshots of a moment in time. The decision to remove mint marks, the effort to solve a national coin shortage, and the subtle variations that came from mass production all combined to create something meaningful. Another reason is accessibility. Unlike some rare coins that are almost impossible to find, the 1967 penny is still out there. You might find one in a jar of old coins, a roll from the bank, or even as change from a purchase. That sense of possibility keeps people searching. And then there's the thrill of discovery. The idea that an ordinary-looking penny could turn out to be something valuable or unique is incredibly appealing. It turns everyday objects into potential treasures. As we come to the end of this story, take a moment to think about the coins you've overlooked. How many times have you seen a penny and dismissed it without a second thought? The 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a reminder that even the smallest, most common things can have hidden depth. It's not just about money. It's about history, craftsmanship, and the excitement of looking a little closer. So next time you come across a penny, don't rush past it. Pick it up, turn it over, study the details, because you never know. That quiet, ordinary coin might just have a story waiting to be discovered. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now is hiding a story that goes back more than 50 years and could be worth far more than 1 cent? Most people overlook it. Some even throw it away. But the 1971 Lincoln penny with no mint mark might just surprise you. The 1971 Lincoln penny is one of those coins that millions of Americans have seen, touched, and spent without a second thought. It looks simple, almost ordinary. On one side, you see Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait. On the other, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall. And yet, behind this everyday appearance lies a piece of American history that collectors continue to search for even today. To understand this coin, we have to go back to the early 1970s. The United States was going through a period of change. The economy was shifting, inflation was rising, and everyday life was evolving. Coins like the Lincoln penny were still being produced in massive quantities because they were essential for daily transactions. In 1971, the U.S. Mint struck billions of pennies to meet demand. Most of these coins were made at the Philadelphia Mint, and unlike some other mints, Philadelphia did not include a mint mark on its coins at that time. That is why you'll see many 1971 pennies with no mint mark at all. This absence of a mint mark often confuses people. Many assume that a missing mark must mean the coin is rare or special. But in reality, for 1971 pennies, no mint mark simply means it was produced in Philadelphia. Still, that does not mean every one of these coins is common in value. In fact, certain versions of this penny can be surprisingly valuable, depending on their condition and any unique characteristics they might have. Let's take a closer look at what makes the 1971 no mint mark Lincoln penny unique. First, the metal composition. These pennies were made primarily of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. This gives them that rich, warm color that many collectors love. The coin weighs around 3.11 grams and has a smooth edge, known as a plain edge. The design is classic and recognizable. The front, or obverse, features Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head, you'll see the word Liberty, and to the right, the year 1971. Since this is a Philadelphia coin, there is no mint mark beneath the date. On the back, or reverse, the Lincoln Memorial is displayed, with the words United States of America and 1 cent clearly visible. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial. Now, here is where things get interesting. While most 1971 no mint mark pennies are common, collectors are always on the lookout for coins in exceptional condition or with unusual errors. Errors are mistakes that happen during the minting process, and they can turn an ordinary coin into something truly special. One of the most talked about possibilities with 1971 pennies is the presence of doubling. This is when parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the die creation process. While major double die errors for this year are not as famous as some others, subtle doubling can still increase a coin's appeal to collectors. Another factor that can dramatically affect value is condition. Coins are graded on a scale, with higher grades indicating better preservation. A 1971 penny that has been heavily used will likely only be worth its face value. But a coin that looks almost brand new with sharp details and original luster can be worth significantly more. For example, uncirculated 1971 no mint mark pennies in high grades have been known to sell for several dollars, and in rare cases even higher. Coins graded at the top of the scale, especially those with a bright red color and no visible wear, can reach prices in the tens or even hundreds of dollars at auction. While that might not sound like a fortune, it is a huge jump from just 1 cent. There have also been instances where collectors paid premium prices for coins with unique toning. Toning refers to the natural color changes that occur over time due to exposure to air and the environment. Some coins develop beautiful shades of blue, purple, or gold, making them highly desirable among collectors. But how can you tell if your 1971 penny is worth more than face value? The first step is to examine it closely. Look at the surface. Is it worn down, or are the details still sharp? Check the color. Does it have that original reddish shine, or has it turned brown over time? Coins that retain their original red color are usually more valuable. Next, inspect the coin for any unusual features. Look for doubling in the letters or numbers. Check for any misprints or off-center strikes. Even small differences can make a big impact on value. It is also important to be aware of counterfeits. Although fake 1971 pennies are not very common due to their generally modest value. Still, if you come across a coin that seems too perfect or has unusual characteristics, it is always a good idea to compare it with a known genuine example or have it evaluated by a professional. Here is a simple tip. Use a magnifying glass or even your phone camera to zoom in on the details. Pay close attention to the date and the word Liberty. These areas often reveal the most about a coin's condition and authenticity. Now, let's talk about something many people find surprising. Even though billions of these pennies were made, finding one in truly perfect condition today is actually quite difficult. Most of them have been in circulation for decades, passing through countless hands, pockets, and cash registers. That is why high-grade examples are so valuable. They are not just coins. They are survivors. There is also a nostalgic element to the 1971 penny. For many collectors, it represents a connection to the past. It might remind them of their childhood, of saving coins in a jar, or of a time when a penny could actually buy something meaningful. This emotional connection adds another layer of value that goes beyond money. Collectors today love the 1971 no-mint mark penny because it is accessible. It is not an extremely rare coin that only wealthy collectors can afford. Instead, it is something that almost anyone can find, study, and appreciate. It offers a perfect entry point into the world of coin collecting. And then there is the thrill of the hunt. The idea that you could discover a valuable coin in your everyday change is incredibly exciting. It turns something ordinary into something extraordinary. It makes you look twice at the coins you might otherwise ignore. Here is a fun fact. The Lincoln penny design used in 1971 had already been in place for over a decade at that point. The Lincoln Memorial Reverse was introduced in 1959 to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. So when you hold a 1971 penny, you are holding a design that has already stood the test of time. Another interesting detail is that copper pennies like the 1971 version are no longer made in the same way today. In 1982, the U.S. Mint changed the composition to mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. That means older pennies like the 1971 have a different weight, feel, and even sound when dropped on a surface. Some collectors specifically seek out these older copper coins for that reason alone. So, what makes the 1971 no-mint mark Lincoln penny truly special? It is not just about rarity or value. It is about the story it tells. It is about the journey it has taken over the years. It is about the possibility that something so small and simple can still hold meaning, history, and even a bit of mystery. The next time you come across a penny, do not dismiss it so quickly. Take a closer look. Check the date. Notice the details. Because hidden among the billions of ordinary coins, there might be one that stands out. One that has been preserved just a little better. One that carries a unique feature. One that could be worth more than you ever expected. And that is the beauty of coin collecting. It is not just about money. It is about curiosity. It is about discovery. It is about seeing value where others see nothing at all. So here is something to think about. How many 1971 pennies have passed through your hands without you noticing? And how many of them might have been worth a second look? Because sometimes, the smallest coin can hold the biggest surprise. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a simple penny, only to discover it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's ancient or made of gold, but because of something most people overlook every single day. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1979 Lincoln penny, a coin that millions have seen, but very few have truly understood. At first glance, the 1979 Lincoln penny looks like any ordinary coin. It's small, copper-colored, and easy to ignore. But this particular penny was struck in 1979 at the Denver Mint, which is where the small D mint mark beneath the date comes from. That tiny letter is more important than most people realize because it tells us exactly where the coin was made, and sometimes that detail alone can make a difference in value. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 1979. The United States was dealing with rising inflation, economic uncertainty, and major shifts in global markets. Despite all of that, the humble penny continued to be produced in massive quantities. Billions of pennies were minted that year, including those from Denver. On paper, that might make the 1979 penny sound common, and in many ways it is. But as with many coins, the real story lies beneath the surface. The Lincoln penny design itself had already been in use for decades by 1979. On the front, you see the familiar profile of Abraham Lincoln, a design that dates back to 1909. It was created by Victor David Brenner, and it was the first time a real person appeared on a circulating U.S. coin. On the back of the 1979 penny, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. This means the 1979 penny is part of a long-running tradition, connecting generations through a simple piece of metal. Speaking of metal, the 1979 penny is made primarily of copper, about 95%, with a small amount of zinc. This composition gives it that rich, warm color that many collectors love. However, over time, these coins can darken or develop spots, depending on how they've been stored. Condition plays a huge role in determining value, and even a common coin can become special if it's preserved in near-perfect shape. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though billions of 1979 pennies were made, not all of them are equal. Some were struck with errors, and others survived in exceptional condition. These are the coins that collectors pay attention to. Minting errors can include off-center strikes, doubled letters, or unusual marks that occurred during production. These mistakes turn an ordinary penny into something unique, something that stands out from the crowd. One of the most talked about features in coins like the 1979 D penny is the possibility of a double die error. This happens when the design is accidentally imprinted twice, slightly offset, creating a visible doubling effect on the letters or numbers. While not every 1979 D penny has this feature, those that do can attract significant interest from collectors. But even without dramatic errors, the condition of the coin can make a huge difference. Coins are graded on a scale, with higher grades indicating better preservation. A 1979 D penny that has never been circulated, meaning it was never used in everyday transactions, can look almost brand new. These are often called mint state coins, and they can be worth far more than their face value. So how much are we really talking about? In most cases, a circulated 1979 D penny is worth exactly 1 cent. But in higher grades, especially those graded MS65 or above, values can climb into several dollars, sometimes even higher depending on demand. Coins with strong luster, sharp details, and no visible damage are the ones that stand out. There have also been auction examples where particularly high-grade 1979 D pennies sold for surprisingly strong prices. While not reaching the levels of rare historical coins, these sales still show that even modern pennies can have collector value. In some cases, exceptional examples have sold for tens or even over $100, especially when certified by professional grading services. Now, before you start digging through jars of coins, it's important to know how to identify a genuine 1979 D penny. First, look for the date clearly stamped on the front of the coin. Right below the year, you should see a small D. That indicates it was minted in Denver. The lettering should be crisp, and the overall design should match standard Lincoln pennies from that era. Be cautious of coins that look altered. Sometimes, people try to modify coins to make them appear more valuable. This can include adding fake mint marks or changing the surface in subtle ways. A real coin will have consistent wear and natural aging. If something looks off, it probably is. Another tip is to examine the coin under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Look closely at the details in Lincoln's hair, the lettering, and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side. Sharp, clear details usually indicate a higher quality strike, which can be more desirable to collectors. Here's a fun fact that many people don't realize. In 1979, the cost of producing a penny was already becoming a concern. Over time, the price of copper would rise, leading to changes in the composition of pennies just a few years later. By 1982, the U.S. Mint switched to a zinc-based composition with only a thin copper coating. This means the 1979 penny represents one of the last years of the classic copper composition, which adds a bit of historical significance. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins are still out there. Because they were produced in such large numbers, 1979 D pennies can still be found in circulation today. That means there's always a chance, however small, that you could come across one in everyday change. And while most will be common, there's always the possibility of finding a high-grade example or even an error coin. Collectors are drawn to coins like the 1979 D penny for several reasons. For some, it's about completing a set. Lincoln pennies have been minted for over a century, and many collectors aim to gather one from each year and mint mark. For others, it's about the thrill of the hunt, searching through rolls of coins or old collections in hopes of finding something special. There's also a sense of connection to history. Even though 1979 isn't that long ago, every coin tells a story. It passed through countless hands, witnessed everyday transactions, and quietly became part of the larger story of the economy and the people who used it. And then there's the simple idea that something so small and ordinary can hold hidden value. That's what makes coins fascinating. They're accessible to everyone, yet full of surprises. You don't need to be a professional collector to start paying attention. All it takes is curiosity. As we look at the 1979 D Lincoln penny today, it serves as a reminder that value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden in the details, in the condition, or in a tiny mint mark that most people ignore. It's a coin that teaches patience, observation, and the importance of looking a little closer so the next time you come across a penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment to check the date, look for that small D, and examine its condition. You might just be holding a piece of history, or even a small treasure hiding in plain sight. Because in the world of coin collecting, the most ordinary objects can sometimes tell the most extraordinary stories. And the 1979 D Lincoln penny is proof that even a single cent can be worth a second look. Imagine pulling a small, ordinary-looking penny from your pocket and realizing it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's made of gold, not because it's ancient, but because of a tiny letter stamped on it. Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1985 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions have seen, but very few truly understand. The 1985 Lincoln penny with a D Mint mark is a 1-cent coin produced in Denver, one of the major United States mint facilities. At first glance, it looks like any other modern penny. It carries the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But like many coins in American history, the real story lies beneath the surface. In the details most people overlook. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 1985. The United States was in a period of economic growth, and cash transactions were still a major part of everyday life. Billions of pennies were needed each year to keep the economy moving. The Denver Mint, marked by the small D on the coin, was responsible for producing a huge portion of that supply. In fact, over 5.6 billion 1985 D pennies were minted. That number alone might make you think this coin is completely common, and in many ways it is. But here's where things get interesting. Even among billions of coins, small differences, tiny errors, and condition can turn an everyday penny into something collectors actively search for. The 1985 penny belongs to an important era in U.S. coin production. Just a few years earlier, in 1982, the composition of the penny changed dramatically. Rising copper prices forced the mint to switch from mostly copper coins to a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. By 1985, all pennies were made using this newer composition. This means the 1985 D penny is primarily zinc, with about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. It may look like solid copper, but it isn't. This change made coins cheaper to produce, but also introduced new challenges, including durability issues and surface wear. Now let's take a closer look at the design. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor his 100th birthday. Above his head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the year 1985. Just below the year, you'll find the small but important D Mint mark, indicating it was struck in Denver. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial. It's a small detail, but it shows the incredible craftsmanship involved in even the most common coins. So what makes the 1985 D penny special? Why are collectors still talking about it today? The answer comes down to condition, errors, and rarity within the ordinary. Most 1985 D pennies you'll find are worn, scratched, and circulated. These are worth exactly 1 cent. But when you find one in uncirculated condition, meaning it was never used in everyday transactions, the value starts to increase. Collectors use grading systems to measure a coin's condition. A high-grade 1985 D penny, especially one graded MS65 or higher, can be worth several dollars. That may not sound like much, but remember, it started as a 1-cent coin. Now here's where things become even more interesting. Some 1985 D pennies have been discovered with errors. These errors are what can push the value much higher. One example is the double die error. This happens when the design is accidentally stamped twice, slightly misaligned. The result is a doubling effect, often visible in the lettering or numbers. While not extremely common for this year, any confirmed double die 1985 D penny can attract strong interest from collectors. Another type of error is off-center strikes. This occurs when the coin is not properly aligned during minting, causing part of the design to be missing. The more dramatic the error, the more valuable the coin can become. There are also die cracks, where small lines appear on the coin due to wear in the minting equipment. While subtle, these can still be collectible, especially if they are unique or visually striking. But perhaps the most important factor is condition. A perfectly preserved 1985 D penny, with its original shine and no signs of wear, can sell for much higher prices than you might expect. In some cases, top-quality examples graded at MS-67 or higher have sold for over $100. That's a huge jump from 1 cent, all because of preservation and quality. There have even been rare auction listings where exceptional coins, with strong luster and near-perfect surfaces, attracted competitive bidding from collectors. While these are not everyday finds, they prove that even a modern penny can hold surprising value. So how can you tell if your 1985 D penny is worth more than face value? Start by checking the mint mark. Look just below the date on the front of the coin. If you see a small D, you have a Denver Mint coin. Next, examine the condition. Does the coin still shine? Are the details sharp, especially in Lincoln's hair and the Lincoln Memorial? Or is it worn and faded? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. Then, look for errors. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Check the lettering, especially Liberty and the date, for any signs of doubling. Look at the edges of the design for unusual features. If something looks off, it might be worth investigating further. Weighing the coin can also help. A standard 1985 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly different, it could indicate an unusual variation or error. And finally, be cautious of fakes. While the 1985 D penny is not one of the most counterfeited coins, altered coins do exist. Some people may try to modify mint marks or create artificial errors. Always compare your coin to verified examples, and when in doubt, consider having it evaluated by a professional grading service. Here's a fun fact that surprises many people. Even though billions of 1985 D pennies were made, finding one in perfect condition today is actually quite difficult. Most were used in everyday transactions, exposed to wear, scratches, and environmental damage. Another interesting detail is that the zinc core used in these pennies can sometimes show through if the copper coating is damaged. This creates a dull gray appearance, which collectors generally avoid. Coins without this damage are much more desirable. Collectors also love the 1985 D penny because it represents a transitional period in U.S. coin history. It reflects the shift to more cost-effective materials, while still maintaining the classic Lincoln design that has become one of the most recognizable images in American currency. For many collectors, this coin is not just about value. It's about the thrill of the hunt. The idea that something so common could still hold hidden potential keeps people searching through jars of old coins, hoping to find that one special piece. And that's what makes the 1985 D Lincoln penny so fascinating. It's a reminder that value is not always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to take a closer look. So the next time you come across a handful of pennies, don't just ignore them. Take a moment, look closely, because among those ordinary coins, there could be a small piece of history, and maybe even a hidden treasure. And who knows, that simple 1985 D penny in your pocket right now might have a story worth far more than 1 cent. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and unknowingly holding something that collectors quietly search for every single day. A coin so ordinary on the surface, yet hiding details that could turn a 1 cent piece into a small piece of history. Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions have seen, but very few truly understand. At first glance, the 1991 Lincoln penny looks like any other cent you've handled. It carries the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the side, and the date 1991 clearly stamped. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been used for decades. But the detail that often confuses people, and sometimes excites collectors, is what's missing. There is no mint mark. To understand why that matters, we need to step back for a moment and talk about how U.S. coins are made. In 1991, pennies were primarily produced at 2 major facilities, Philadelphia and Denver. Coins struck in Denver carry a small D mint mark just below the date. Coins from Philadelphia, however, traditionally had no mint mark at all, especially for pennies during that time period. So when you see a 1991 penny without a mint mark, it doesn't mean it's an error by default. In fact, most of these coins were made intentionally at the Philadelphia Mint. That's what makes this story interesting. The coin itself isn't rare just because it lacks a mint mark. But within this category, there are specific versions, conditions, and subtle variations that can make certain pieces far more valuable than others. The 1991 Lincoln penny belongs to a long-running design series that began in 1959, replacing the earlier wheatback pennies. By 1991, the United States Mint had already produced billions of Lincoln Memorial cents. This was a time when pennies were still widely used in daily transactions, and production numbers were extremely high. In fact, over 4 billion pennies were struck in Philadelphia alone that year. That number might make you think there's nothing special here. And for most coins, that's true. But in the world of coin collecting, rarity isn't always about how many were made. It's about how many survive in exceptional condition, how many contain errors, and how many stand out from the rest. Let's talk about what the 1991 penny is actually made of. By this time, U.S. pennies were no longer solid copper. Instead, they were composed of a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This change had been introduced in 1982 due to rising copper prices. So while the coin looks like copper, it's mostly zinc inside. This detail matters because it affects how the coin ages. Many of these pennies develop spots, discoloration, or surface damage over time, which lowers their value. Now, here's where things get more interesting. Some 1991 no-mint mark pennies have been discovered with striking errors or unusual characteristics. These are the coins that collectors pay close attention to. For example, off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, can make a coin more desirable. Double die errors, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated, are even more sought after. Another factor that can dramatically increase value is condition. A 1991 penny that has been in circulation for years is usually worth just 1 cent. But if you find one in uncirculated condition, meaning it was never used in everyday transactions, its value can rise significantly. Coins graded at the highest levels with sharp details and original shine can sell for much higher prices than expected. There have been cases where high-grade 1991 pennies without a mint mark have sold for several dollars, and in rare situations even higher depending on grading and demand. While these are not typically life-changing amounts, they do show how a simple coin can become something more when it meets the right criteria. Collectors also look for what are known as transitional or unusual planchet errors. Although rare, some coins are struck on the wrong type of metal or have defects in the blank before they are stamped. These kinds of errors can turn a common penny into a highly collectible item. So how can you tell if your 1991 no mint mark penny is worth more than face value? The first step is to examine it closely. Look at the surface under good lighting. Check for any unusual doubling in the letters or numbers. Pay attention to the edges of the design. If something looks slightly off or different from other pennies, it could be worth investigating further. Next, consider the condition. Does the coin still have its original shine, or is it worn and dull? Are there scratches, spots, or damage? The better the condition, the higher the potential value. Collectors often use grading scales to determine this, ranging from heavily worn to perfect mint state. It's also important to compare your coin with verified examples. Many collectors use reference guides or online databases to see what similar coins look like and how much they've sold for. This helps avoid overestimating value and gives a realistic idea of what your coin might be worth. One interesting fact about the 1991 penny is how easily it can be overlooked. Because there's no mint mark, many people assume something is missing or that the coin is unusual. In reality, it's completely normal for Philadelphia coins of that time. But this misunderstanding sometimes leads people to search through their change more carefully, which is exactly how rare variations are discovered. Another surprising detail is how many valuable coins have been found in everyday places. People have discovered collectible pennies in old jars, forgotten drawers, and even loose change from grocery stores. The idea that something valuable could be hiding in plain sight is part of what makes coin collecting so exciting. Collectors today are drawn to coins like the 1991 Lincoln penny not because every example is rare, but because of the possibility. The possibility that among billions of coins, a few stand out. The possibility that a small detail could make a big difference. And the possibility that anyone, anywhere, could find one. There's also a sense of connection to history. Even though 1991 may not feel like the distant past, Every coin from that year has traveled through time. It has passed through countless hands, been part of everyday transactions, and quietly carried a piece of American history with it. For new collectors, coins like this are often the starting point. They are easy to find, simple to understand, and offer a chance to learn the basics of the hobby. For experienced collectors, they represent an ongoing search for perfection and rarity within the ordinary. As you look at your own coins, you might start to see them differently. That small penny you once ignored could hold more interest than you expected. Not necessarily because it's worth a fortune, but because it tells a story. A story about how coins are made, how they circulate, and how even the smallest details can matter. And that brings us back to the beginning. The next time you pick up a 1991 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, take a closer look. Notice the design, the condition, and any unusual features. Because while most of these coins are common, a few are not. And the only way to find them is to pay attention. In a world where value is often measured in dollars, coins like this remind us that curiosity can be just as rewarding. The thrill of discovery, the excitement of learning, and the idea that something ordinary can become extraordinary are what keep collectors searching. So the question is simple. How many 1991 pennies have you passed by without a second thought? And what if the next one you find is different? Because sometimes, the smallest coin can hold the biggest surprise. What if the next coin sitting quietly in your pocket isn't just spare change, but a small piece of American history that could be worth far more than you ever imagined? Today, we're diving into a coin that millions of people have seen, but very few truly understand. The 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 1994 penny looks completely ordinary. It's small, copper-colored, and easy to overlook. Most people wouldn't think twice before spending it. But for collectors, this coin tells a story. And depending on its condition and subtle details, it can carry more value than its 1-cent face suggests. The 1994 Lincoln penny is part of a long-running series that began in 1909, when the Lincoln cent was first introduced to honor President Abraham Lincoln. By 1994, this design had already been in circulation for decades. On the front, you'll see Lincoln's profile, a familiar image to generations of Americans. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design that remained in use from 1959 until 2008. Now here's where things get interesting. When people hear no mint mark, they often assume something is missing or rare. But in reality, for pennies like the one from 1994, having no mint mark is completely normal. These coins were struck in Philadelphia, one of the main U.S. mint locations. For many years, Philadelphia-produced pennies simply didn't carry a mint mark at all. In 1994, billions of pennies were produced, and a large portion of them came from Philadelphia without any mint mark. So technically, the absence of a mint mark doesn't automatically make the coin rare. But that doesn't mean it has no value. In fact, under the right conditions, this everyday coin can become surprisingly desirable. Let's talk about what this coin is made of. By 1994, the composition of the Lincoln penny had already changed from the earlier copper coins. Instead of being mostly copper, the 1994 penny is made of a zinc core with a thin copper coating. This gives it that familiar reddish appearance, but inside, it's mostly zinc. This change originally happened in 1982 due to rising copper prices. Even though the material may seem less valuable, the design still carries a lot of historical meaning. The portrait of Lincoln on the front was created by Victor David Brenner, and it remains one of the most recognizable coin designs in U.S. history. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, is also unique because if you look very closely, you can actually see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial. Now let's get to the part that collectors really care about. What makes a 1994 no mint mark penny valuable? The truth is, most of these pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. But condition changes everything. Coins that have never been circulated, known as uncirculated coins, can be worth significantly more. These coins have sharp details, no wear, and often a bright, original shine and top condition. A 1994 no mint mark penny can sell for several dollars, sometimes even higher depending on grading. Coins graded at the highest levels, like MS-67 or above, are much harder to find. These are coins that look almost perfect, with minimal marks and strong luster. In rare cases, such high-grade examples have sold for over $20 or even $50. But condition isn't the only factor. Errors and varieties can turn an ordinary coin into something special. While the 1994 penny is not widely known for major errors, there are still minor variations that collectors watch for. These include off-center strikes, double dies, or coins with unusual coloring due to minting issues. For example, a double die error occurs when the coin is struck in a way that creates a slight doubling effect on the letters or numbers. It can be subtle, but under magnification, it becomes visible. Coins with these types of errors are much rarer and can command higher prices among collectors. There have been auction listings where high-grade 1994 pennies, especially those with exceptional eye appeal or minor errors, have sold for notable amounts. While they may not reach the thousands like some older rare coins, they still prove that even modern coins can hold value when they meet the right conditions. So how can you tell if your 1994 penny is worth more than just 1 cent? Start by checking the date and confirming there's no mint mark under the year. That indicates it was minted in Philadelphia. Next, examine the coin closely. Look at Lincoln's face, the lettering, and the overall surface. Are the details sharp? Is there a strong shine? Or does it look worn and dull? If the coin looks nearly perfect, it might be worth having it evaluated by a professional grading service. These organizations assign a grade that helps determine the coin's value in the collector market. Also, use a magnifying glass or a coin loop to check for errors. Look closely at the words Liberty and In God We Trust. Any signs of doubling or unusual shapes could indicate a valuable variety. One important thing to remember is authenticity. While fake pennies are not very common for modern coins like the 1994 Lincoln cent, altered coins do exist. Some people may try to modify coins to make them appear like rare errors. That's why careful inspection and, if necessary, professional verification is important. Now here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. Even though billions of these coins were made, finding one in perfect condition today is surprisingly difficult. Why? Because most of them were used in everyday transactions. They were dropped, scratched, and worn down over time. That means truly pristine examples are much rarer than the original mintage numbers suggest. Another interesting fact is that many collectors actually enjoy searching through rolls of pennies just to find coins like this. It's called coin roll hunting, and it's like a treasure hunt using everyday currency. You never know what you might find, so why do collectors still care about a coin like the 1994 no mint mark penny? It comes down to the thrill of discovery and the idea that value isn't always obvious. This coin represents a moment in time, a piece of American history that passed through countless hands. And for collectors, even the most common coins can become meaningful when they are preserved in excellent condition or show something unique. There's also a sense of accessibility. Not every collector can afford rare coins worth thousands of dollars. But coins like the 1994 penny allow anyone to start collecting. It's affordable, easy to find, and still holds the possibility of uncovering something special. Over time, as more coins are lost, damaged, or removed from circulation, the number of high-quality examples continues to shrink. That means coins that seem ordinary today could become more desirable in the future, especially for collectors who want complete sets of Lincoln cents. So the next time you come across a 1994 penny with no mint mark, don't just toss it aside. Take a closer look. Examine its details. Think about where it's been and how many people have held it before you. Because sometimes, the most ordinary objects carry the most interesting stories. And hidden within those stories, there might just be a little extra value waiting to be discovered. And who knows, the next coin you check could be the one that surprises you. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and holding something that millions of people overlook every single day. Yet in rare cases, that same coin could be worth far more than 1 cent. Today, we're uncovering the truth about the 1995 no mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries a story, hidden details, and surprising value that most people never notice. The 1995 Lincoln penny without a mint mark is part of one of the most widely circulated coin series in American history. At first glance, it doesn't seem special at all. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, just like billions of other pennies. But what makes this particular coin interesting is not what stands out immediately, but what doesn't. The absence of a mint mark. To understand why that matters, we need to go back a bit. In 1995, pennies were produced at multiple United States mint facilities, primarily Philadelphia and Denver. Coins from Denver carry a small D mint mark, while coins from Philadelphia, especially at that time, were often released without any mint mark at all. That means a 1995 penny with no mint mark was struck in Philadelphia. So technically, this coin isn't rare simply because it lacks a mint mark. In fact, hundreds of millions of these were made. But here's where things start to get interesting. Within that massive production, a few coins stand out due to small differences, minting errors, and condition factors that can turn an ordinary penny into something collectors actively search for. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The obverse, or front, shows the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln, first introduced in 1909. Above his head, you'll see the word Liberty on the left and the date 1995 on the right. Below the date is where a mint mark would appear if it had one. On this coin, that space is blank. The reverse, or back, features the Lincoln Memorial, which was used on pennies from 1959 to 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny image of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail many people never notice. Around the design, you'll find the words United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent. The coin is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating, giving it that familiar reddish-brown appearance. By 1995, the U.S. Mint had already switched from solid copper pennies to this zinc core composition, making the coins lighter and cheaper to produce. Now here's the part that really captures attention. While most 1995 no-mint mark pennies are only worth face value, a small number of them feature minting errors that can make them significantly more valuable. One of the most talked about errors from this year is the 1995 double die penny. A double die error happens when the coin's design is stamped slightly misaligned, creating a visible doubling effect on certain parts of the coin. On the 1995 double die penny, this is most noticeable in the word Liberty and the motto In God We Trust. Instead of clean, sharp letters, you may see a subtle shadow or doubling that makes the text look thicker or slightly blurred. To an untrained eye, it might look like normal wear or damage. But to a collector, that doubling can be the difference between a 1-cent coin and a coin worth hundreds of dollars. Some verified examples of the 1995 double die penny have sold for over $100, and in higher grades, even more. Coins in near-perfect condition with minimal wear and strong doubling can attract serious interest from collectors. And that brings us to another important factor: condition. Even without any errors, a 1995 no-mint mark penny in pristine condition can be worth more than you'd expect. Collectors use a grading system to evaluate coins, ranging from heavily worn to perfect mint state. A coin that has never been circulated with sharp details and no visible damage is far more desirable. For example, a 1995 penny graded at a high mint state level, like MS65 or above, can sell for several dollars, sometimes more depending on its appearance. It may not sound like a fortune, but for a coin that originally cost 1 cent, that's a significant increase in value. Now let's talk about real-world examples. Over the years, collectors have discovered 1995 no-mint mark pennies with strong double die features selling at auctions and online marketplaces for anywhere between $20 and $200, depending on clarity and condition. While these are not million-dollar coins, they represent a fascinating opportunity hiding in everyday pocket change. So how can you tell if you have one of these valuable coins? Start by checking the date and mint mark. If your penny says 1995 and there's no letter below the date, you're on the right track. Next, examine the lettering closely, especially Liberty and In God We Trust. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Look for signs of doubling, where the edges of the letters appear slightly duplicated or thicker than normal. Be careful not to confuse this with machine doubling, which is a more common and less valuable effect caused during the minting process. True double die errors have a more defined and consistent look, often with clear separation in the design. Also pay attention to the overall condition of the coin. Coins that are shiny, clean, and show minimal wear are more valuable. However, avoid cleaning your coin, as this can actually reduce its value. Collectors prefer coins in their original, untouched state. Another tip is to compare your coin with verified images of known double die examples. This can help you spot differences and confirm whether your coin is something special. Now here's something many people don't realize. Even though billions of pennies are produced, only a tiny fraction ever become valuable. And those that do often go unnoticed for years, sitting in jars, drawers, or old piggy banks. There's a certain thrill in knowing that something so small and common could hold hidden value. It turns everyday objects into a kind of treasure hunt. And that's exactly why collectors are so passionate about coins like the 1995 no-mint mark penny. There are also a few fun details that make this coin even more interesting. For one, 1995 was a time before smartphones, before digital payments became widespread. Coins were used constantly in daily life, meaning these pennies passed through countless hands. Every scratch, every mark tells a small part of its journey. Another surprising detail is how precise the minting process has to be. Even a tiny misalignment can create an error that transforms an ordinary coin into a collector's item. It's a reminder that perfection is hard to achieve, and sometimes, it's the imperfections that make something valuable. Collectors today continue to search for coins like this not just for their monetary value, but for the stories they represent. Each coin is a piece of history, a snapshot of a specific time and place. The 1995 penny may not seem old compared to coins from the 1800s, but it still holds a unique place in the modern era of coin collecting. And as time goes on, coins from the 1990s are gradually becoming more interesting to newer generations of collectors. What was once considered recent is slowly becoming vintage. That shift in perspective can also influence demand and value. So the next time you come across a handful of pennies, don't ignore them. Take a closer look. Check the dates. Look for missing mint marks. Examine the lettering, because hidden among those ordinary coins could be something that stands out, something that tells a story, and maybe even something worth more than you ever expected. The 1995 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how something simple can hold layers of meaning and potential. It's not just about the money. It's about curiosity, discovery, and the excitement of finding something others have overlooked. And that raises an interesting question. How many valuable coins have already passed through your hands without you ever noticing? What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now isn't just spare change, but a small piece of American history that collectors are actively searching for? A coin so common at first glance, yet full of hidden details that could make it far more interesting, and sometimes more valuable, than you ever imagined. Today, we're taking a closer look at the 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin that millions of people have seen, but very few truly understand. The 1998 Lincoln penny is part of a long-running series that began in 1909, honoring one of America's most respected presidents, Abraham Lincoln. By 1998, this coin had already been in circulation for nearly 90 years. It was a familiar sight in everyday transactions, used to buy groceries, pay for gas, or simply collected in jars at home. But even in such a common coin, there are details and variations that can turn an ordinary penny into something collectors care deeply about. When you hear no mint mark, it might sound unusual or even rare, but in reality, it simply means the coin was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. For many years, coins struck in Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark at all. So, a 1998 penny without a mint mark is not an error by default. It's actually the standard version from Philadelphia. However, what makes this coin interesting is not just where it was made, but what variations and details might exist within that production. To understand this coin better, we need to step back into 1998. The United States economy was strong, technology was rapidly advancing, and everyday cash transactions were still the norm. Billions of pennies were produced that year to meet demand. In fact, over 5 billion Lincoln pennies were minted in Philadelphia alone in 1998. That means this coin is not rare in terms of quantity. But as any collector knows, rarity is not always about how many were made. It's about how many survive in special conditions or with unique features. The design of the 1998 Lincoln penny remains classic and instantly recognizable. On the front, you see the profile of Abraham Lincoln facing right. This design was created by Victor David Brenner and has been used since 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1998. If there is no mint mark below the date, that tells you it was struck in Philadelphia. The phrase "In God We Trust" appears across the top, completing the iconic look on the back of the coin. You'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to celebrate Lincoln's 150th birthday. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny representation of the statue of Lincoln inside the memorial. It's a small detail, but it shows the level of craftsmanship that went into even the smallest denomination of U.S. currency. Now let's talk about what really gets collectors interested. While a standard 1998 no-mint mark penny is very common, there are certain varieties and conditions that can make it stand out. One of the most talked about variations is known as the wide AM variety. This refers to the spacing between the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse side of the coin and most 1998 Philadelphia pennies. The letters A and M are very close together, almost touching. But in the wide AM variety, there is a noticeable gap between these two letters. This difference might seem small, but in the world of coin collecting, it's a big deal. The wide AM variety was not intended for circulation coins in 1998, which makes its appearance in regular coins unusual and highly collectible. Another detail to look for is the condition of the coin. Most pennies from 1998 have been heavily circulated. They've been handled, scratched, and worn down over time. But if you happen to find one in near-perfect condition, what collectors call uncirculated or mint state, it can be worth significantly more than face value. So how much are we really talking about? For a typical circulated 1998 no-mint mark penny, the value is usually just 1 cent, maybe a few cents at most. But if you find a wide AM variety, the value can jump dramatically. Depending on the condition, these coins have been known to sell for anywhere from $10 to over $100. In exceptional, high-grade conditions, some examples have even reached several $100s at auction. There are also error coins to consider. Errors happen during the minting process, and they can include things like off-center strikes, double dies, or unusual planchet issues. While not extremely common, a 1998 penny with a clear and visible error can attract serious attention from collectors and increase its value significantly. Now you might be wondering, how can you tell if your 1998 penny is one of these valuable varieties? The first step is to look closely at the reverse side, specifically at the word America. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. If the A and M are clearly separated, you may have a wide AM variety. If they are nearly touching, then it's the standard version. Next, examine the overall condition of the coin. Look for sharp details, minimal scratches, and original luster. Coins that appear shiny and well-preserved are generally more valuable. Also, check for any unusual features or errors that stand out. Even small differences can make a big impact in the collecting world. When it comes to authenticity, 1998 pennies are not commonly counterfeited because of their low base value. However, altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify coins to make them appear like rare varieties. That's why it's important to compare your coin carefully with verified examples or consult a trusted coin expert if you believe you have something special. Here's a surprising fact. Many collectors didn't even notice the wide AM variety when it first appeared. It was only later, after careful observation and comparison, that this variation was discovered and recognized. That means there could still be coins out there, sitting unnoticed in jars, drawers, or old collections, waiting to be found. Another interesting detail is how this coin represents a transitional moment in U.S. coinage. The late 1990s were just before the introduction of the state quarters program, which would change the way Americans viewed and collected coins. The 1998 penny is part of the last era when everyday coins had a more consistent, long-standing design. Collectors today love the 1998 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare in the traditional sense, but because it offers the thrill of discovery. It's a reminder that valuable finds don't always come from expensive purchases or rare auctions. Sometimes they come from paying attention to the small details in something you already have. There's also a sense of connection to history. Every coin tells a story, and the 1998 penny is no different. It represents a specific time in American life, a snapshot of everyday commerce, and a continuation of a design that has been part of the nation's identity for over a century. And perhaps the most exciting part is this. You don't need to be a professional collector to start looking. Anyone can check their change, examine old coin jars, or go through family collections. The possibility that you might find a hidden gem makes the search itself rewarding, so the next time you come across a 1998 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it as just another coin. Take a closer look. Check the spacing in America. Observe its condition. Look for anything unusual, because in that small copper-colored coin, there could be more than just 1 cent of value. And who knows, the next valuable discovery might already be in your hands, waiting for you to notice what others have overlooked. What if the next penny you pick up is not just spare change, but a small piece of American history hiding in plain sight? Most people overlook it. They toss it into jars, leave it in drawers, or spend it without a second thought. But one specific coin, the 2005 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, has quietly captured the attention of collectors across the country. And today, you're about to discover why. The 2005 no mint mark Lincoln penny is one of the most common coins you'll ever come across. Yet it carries a story that goes far beyond its face value. At first glance, it looks like any other penny. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been part of American currency since 1909. But this particular coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and unlike some other coins, it does not carry a visible mint mark. That small detail often confuses people, making them wonder if they found something rare or even valuable. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 2005. This was a time when the United States Mint was still producing billions of Lincoln cents every year. Pennies were widely used in daily transactions and demand was high. The Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most historic mints in the country, produced a massive number of these coins. And for most Lincoln cents struck in Philadelphia, no mint mark was added. This wasn't an error. It was simply standard practice. The design of the 2005 penny follows the long-running Lincoln Memorial style, which was introduced in 1959. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the year 2005 to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, with the words "United States of America" and "E Pluribus Unum" surrounding it. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln's statue inside the memorial, a detail many people miss. The coin is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. This composition was introduced in 1982 to reduce production costs. So while it looks like a solid copper coin, it's actually much lighter than older pennies. This change is important because it affects how the coin wears over time and how collectors evaluate its condition. Now here's where things get interesting. Even though the 2005 no mint mark penny was produced in huge numbers, certain versions of this coin can be surprisingly valuable. And it all comes down to condition, rarity within circulation, and the possibility of mint errors. Most 2005 pennies you find in circulation are worth exactly 1 cent. But if you come across one in uncirculated condition, meaning it has never been used in everyday transactions, its value can increase. Collectors are always searching for coins that look as fresh as the day they were minted. A pristine 2005 penny with no scratches, no discoloration, and full original luster can be worth several dollars, sometimes even more if professionally graded. Then there are error coins. These are the hidden treasures that can turn an ordinary penny into something extraordinary. In 2005, a few Lincoln cents were struck with noticeable errors. These include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, and double die errors, where parts of the design appear duplicated due to a misalignment during the minting process. While these errors are rare, they do exist and collectors are willing to pay significant amounts for them. For example, a 2005 no mint mark penny with a strong double die error has been known to sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s, depending on the visibility of the error and the coin's condition. Off-center strikes can also fetch high prices, especially if the date is still clearly visible. Even minor errors, like die cracks or unusual surface marks caused during production, can increase a coin's value to the right collector. Another factor that can influence value is grading. Professional grading companies evaluate coins based on their condition and assign them a grade on a scale from 1 to 70. A 2005 penny graded at MS65 or higher, meaning it is in near-perfect condition, can be worth much more than a circulated coin. Some high-grade examples have sold for over $100 simply because they are so well preserved. But how can you tell if the penny you have is worth more than 1 cent? The first step is to examine it carefully. Look at the surface under good lighting. Check for any unusual features, such as doubling in the letters or numbers, misalignment, or areas where the design seems incomplete. Pay close attention to the edges and the overall finish. A coin that stands out visually might be worth a closer look. It's also important to weigh the coin. A standard 2005 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it feels significantly heavier or lighter, it could indicate an error or, in rare cases, a counterfeit. While counterfeit pennies are not common, they do exist, especially when it comes to coins that appear valuable. Using a small digital scale can help you confirm the authenticity of your coin. Another simple test is the magnet test. Since the 2005 penny is made mostly of zinc and copper, it should not be attracted to a magnet. If it is, that's a sign something is not right. Always compare your coin with a known genuine example if possible. One surprising fact about the 2005 Lincoln penny is how often it is overlooked. Because it is so common, many people assume it has no value beyond its face value. But this mindset is exactly what makes it interesting. Hidden among millions of ordinary coins are a few that stand out, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. Collectors love this coin not because it is rare in general, but because of the possibilities it offers. It's a reminder that even the most ordinary objects can hold unexpected value. For beginners, it's an accessible entry point into coin collecting. You don't need a large investment to start searching. All it takes is a bit of curiosity and attention to detail. There's also a sense of connection that comes with collecting coins like this. Each penny has passed through countless hands, witnessing everyday life in ways we rarely think about. When you hold a 2005 Lincoln penny, you're holding a small piece of that history. It may have been used to buy a cup of coffee, pay for a newspaper, or simply carried in someone's pocket for years. And then there's the thrill of the hunt. The idea that something valuable could be hiding in your spare change is incredibly exciting. It turns a simple activity, like checking your coins, into a treasure hunt. Every penny becomes a possibility. Over the years, stories have emerged of people finding valuable coins in the most unexpected places. A jar of old change, a forgotten drawer, even coins received as everyday change at a store. While not every 2005 penny will be worth more than 1 cent, the chance that one might be is enough to keep collectors searching. As time goes on, coins like the 2005 Lincoln penny may become more interesting to collectors. As fewer high-quality examples remain in circulation, their value can increase. Coins that are common today can become harder to find in top condition tomorrow. That's one of the key principles of coin collecting. So the next time you come across a penny, take a closer look. Don't just see it as spare change. Look at the details, the condition, and the possibility that it might be something more. The 2005 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a perfect example of how something small and ordinary can carry a much bigger story. And here's the thought to leave you with. Right now, somewhere out there, a valuable coin is sitting unnoticed, waiting for someone to recognize its true worth. Could be in a pocket, a jar, or even in your own home. The question is, will you be the one who finds it? Welcome back. Imagine reaching into your pocket, pulling out a simple penny, and realizing it might be worth far more than 1 cent. Not because it's ancient, not because it's made of gold, but because of a small detail most people never notice. Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 2006 mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary but can hold surprising value depending on what you're looking for. The 2006 Lincoln penny is a modern United States coin, struck at the Denver Mint. The small D under the date tells you exactly where it was made. At first glance, it's just another penny in circulation, something millions of people handle every day without a second thought. But for collectors, this coin represents a mix of history, craftsmanship, and hidden opportunity. To understand why this coin matters, we need to go back to its origins. The Lincoln penny series itself began in 1909 to honor President Abraham Lincoln, making it the first U.S. coin to feature a real person. By 2006, the design had been in use for nearly a century, with Lincoln's portrait still facing right on the front. That continuity is part of what makes this series so iconic. The 2006 issue wasn't created for any special anniversary, but it continued a legacy that collectors deeply respect. In 2006, the United States Mint produced billions of pennies. The Denver Mint alone struck a massive number of these coins, meaning they were never intended to be rare. They were made for everyday use, to move through the economy, not to sit in collections. But as often happens in the world of coins, rarity isn't always about how many were made. Sometimes, it's about the details within those millions. Let's talk about the coin itself. The 2006 Lincoln penny is made mostly of zinc with a thin copper plating. This composition has been used since 1982, when the mint shifted away from solid copper pennies. The coin weighs about 2.5 grams and has that familiar reddish-brown appearance when new, which can darken over time. On the front, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile, along with the year 2006 and the small D mint mark. The words "In God We Trust" curve along the top, while Liberty sits to the left. On the back, the design features the Lincoln Memorial, a symbol that was used from 1959 to 2008. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail that many people overlooked. So what makes this coin interesting to collectors? The answer lies in condition and errors. Most 2006 pennies are only worth their face value, but certain examples can be worth much more. Coins that are in perfect, uncirculated condition, especially those graded at the highest levels, can command significantly higher prices. But the real excitement comes from mint errors. These are mistakes made during the production process, and they are what turn an ordinary coin into something rare. For the 2006 penny, collectors look for things like off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, or double dies, where the lettering appears duplicated due to a misalignment in the die used to stamp the coin. Another error to watch for is die cracks or cuds. These occur when the die used to strike the coin develops small breaks, leaving raised lines or blobs on the coin's surface. While these might look like damage to an untrained eye, they can actually increase the coin's value if they are genuine mint errors. There have also been reports of weak strikes, where parts of the design appear faded or incomplete. In some cases, these coins become collectible because they show how the minting process can go slightly off track. Even a small variation can make a big difference to someone who understands what they're looking at. Now let's talk about value. Most 2006 pennies you find in circulation are worth exactly 1 cent. But if you come across a coin in pristine condition, especially one that has never been used and still has its original shine, it could be worth a few dollars or more to the right buyer. Error coins can be much more valuable. Depending on the type and severity of the error, some have sold for tens or even hundreds of dollars. For example, a well-defined off-center strike or a strong double die can attract serious attention from collectors. High-grade coins that receive top ratings from professional grading services have also been known to sell for impressive prices, far beyond what most people would expect from a modern penny. So, how can you tell if your 2006 penny is special? The first step is to look closely. Check the mint mark and make sure it's clearly a D. Then examine the coin under good lighting. Look for unusual features like doubling in the letters, misaligned designs, or any irregularities that stand out. Condition is also key. A coin with no scratches, no discoloration, and sharp details is always more valuable than one that has been heavily used. Collectors often use magnifying tools to inspect coins, and even small differences can matter. Be cautious when it comes to authenticity. While modern pennies are rarely counterfeited, altered coins do exist. Some people try to create fake errors by damaging coins intentionally. Genuine mint errors have specific characteristics that experts can recognize, so if you think you found something valuable, it's worth getting it checked by a professional. Here's a fun detail that many people don't realize. The Lincoln Memorial on the back of the coin includes a tiny image of Lincoln himself sitting inside. That means the penny actually shows Lincoln twice, once on the front and once on the back. It's a subtle design feature that has fascinated collectors for decades. Another interesting fact is how these coins age. Over time, the copper plating can wear away, revealing the zinc core underneath. This can create unusual color patterns that sometimes attract attention, though not all of these are considered valuable. Still, they add character to each coin and remind us that even small pieces of currency have their own stories. Collectors love the 2006 Lincoln penny because it represents accessibility. Unlike rare coins that cost thousands of dollars, this is something anyone can find. It's a reminder that treasure hunting doesn't always require a big investment. Sometimes, it just takes patience, curiosity, and a keen eye. For many collectors, the thrill comes from the search, going through rolls of pennies, checking each one carefully, hoping to spot that one coin that stands out. The 2006 penny is part of that journey. It may not always be valuable, but it always has potential. There's also a deeper connection to history. Even though this coin is relatively modern, it's part of a long tradition that dates back more than a century. Every Lincoln penny carries a piece of that legacy, linking the past to the present in a way that few objects can. And that's what makes this coin so fascinating. It's not just about money. It's about discovery, about paying attention to the small details that most people ignore. It's about realizing that something as simple as a penny can hold stories, secrets, and sometimes unexpected value. So the next time you come across a 2006 Lincoln penny, don't just spend it without a second thought. Take a closer look. Turn it over in your hand. Check the details, because hidden within that small piece of metal could be something far more interesting than you ever imagined. And who knows? The coin you almost overlooked today might be the one that sparks your curiosity, starts a collection, or even turns out to be worth far more than 1 cent.